I am a full-time iOS engineer. I don't have a computer science degree, and before I started learning iOS programming, I had no experience with computer science or engineering. I don't even have a degree in a quantitative field. I studied international relations in college. I say all of this because people are often reluctant to start learning iOS programming, or even programming in general, because they feel that they need formal computer science training or some other prerequisite. I'm here to tell you that while prior experience is certainly helpful, it's not required. You can teach yourself how to make iOS apps by utilizing online resources, as long as you're willing to be patient with yourself and have realistic expectations about the apps you'll be able to produce. If you're intent on building a fully featured social networking app with a beautiful interface, all on your own, and within 6 months, you'll probably find yourself very frustrated very quickly. But if your goal is to learn iOS programming, do fun and interesting things with code, and build an app that lots of people will find enjoyable and useful, you'll be surprised at how far you can get with just a few months of focused learning. In this video, I'll go over the main tools you'll need, some good resources to get you started, and some tips for learning iOS effectively. First, let's make sure we define what iOS programming is. iOS programming is the process of making applications for Apple's iOS devices, which as of this recording in January 2014 include iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad. Okay, so at a basic level, what do you need to know to make iOS apps? This was the first question I had when I wanted to start making iOS apps, and I couldn't find a concise list of the basic required tools. So here's that list, and once I go through that, I'll discuss some resources where you can learn this stuff. The first thing you'll want to learn are the fundamental concepts common to all practical programming languages. These include things like data types, strings, operators, conditionals, loops, functions, arguments, logging, and so on. If that list just flew over your head, don't worry, it sounds scarier than it is. Next is the Objective-C programming language. Objective-C is the main programming language used to write iOS code. Some more advanced iOS code is written in the closely related C and C++ programming languages, but you won't need either of those for a while, and you'll be able to cross that bridge when you get to it. Next is the Xcode Integrated Development Environment, or IDE. Integrated development environments are software programs that allow you to write code more easily, and many IDEs include advanced features for building user interfaces, finding problems with your code, or what programmers call debugging, running your applications on simulators and devices, and doing many other software development tasks. Xcode is the IDE you use for making iOS apps. It's where you write your code, build the user interface, test your app, and submit it to the App Store. Then we have the iOS Software Development Kit, or SDK. The iOS SDK contains all of the built-in technologies you can use in making your iOS apps. This includes things like the user interface, camera support, audio and video, image processing, animation, networking, location monitoring and maps, databases, and security, the list goes on. But the basic idea is that an SDK allows you to tap into the built-in capabilities of a device so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to add a common feature to your app or expand upon built-in functionality. The last thing you need to be aware of to get started with basic iOS programming is the iOS Developer Program. The Xcode IDE is a free download, but at the time of this recording, Apple charges $99 per year to join the iOS Developer Program. Membership in the program is required to submit apps to the App Store and to test the apps you make on actual devices. You can get by for a few weeks as you learn the basics of iOS and see if you want to go further. But once you decide you're serious about iOS programming, there's really no way around joining the developer program. Okay, so where do you learn all of this stuff? Well, I'll try to add some tutorials on this channel, but there are tons of great resources out there already. First, we have Zed Shaw's Learn Code the Hard Way series. Two of his books in particular are relevant for our purposes, and they're both free. The first is Learn Python the Hard Way. Python is another programming language and is not used in iOS, but this book uses Python as a way to teach you the fundamentals of computer programming. Use this book for the concepts, focusing more on the general programming ideas than on the Python language specifically. The other relevant book in this series is Learn C the Hard Way. Objective-C is a superset of the C programming language, meaning it inherits the functionality of C. And a lot of advanced iOS code is done in C. So don't worry about this book for now, but definitely come back to it after you have some basic to intermediate experience with iOS programming. The next resource is lynda.com. As of this recording, lynda.com is a paid service with a $25 a month subscription fee. I try to avoid recommending paid services because there is so much quality free content out there for learning iOS. But some of the content here is really worth watching, especially for beginners, and you can always cancel the subscription. There are 5 courses in particular that will help you get started. The first is Foundations of Programming Fundamentals. Like Zed Shaw's book, this course uses a different programming language to explain the fundamental concepts, in this case JavaScript. Again, the idea is to focus on the core programming concepts without worrying too much about the language. The next 3 are Objective-C Essential Training, iOS App Development Essential Training, and Distributing iOS Applications through the App Store. These courses cover the basics of Objective-C, the iOS SDK, Xcode, and getting your apps on the store. The last one on this list covers object-oriented design. Objective-C is an object-oriented programming language, so this course will explain what that means and help you structure your apps more effectively. Next is the Stanford University course on iTunes U. This is one of the best resources out there for learning iOS, and it's free. However, it's not for total beginners. You need to know the fundamentals of programming in order to get the most out of it. And remember as you go through the course that it's being taught to Stanford students who have taken computer science prerequisites. So don't get discouraged if it takes you some time to understand the concepts. Go through the course at your own pace, and if you hear a term along the way that you don't understand, take a few minutes to look it up on the internet before continuing. Okay, so the last resource I am going to mention for now is stackoverflow.com. This is a crowdsourced Q&A site for computer science that you'll use frequently as you learn. It covers a huge range of topics from beginner to advanced, and tons of skilled programmers contribute to the site. There are many more resources out there, but this will definitely get you up and running with iOS. Now a few tips. Number 1, as you go through tutorials, complete the full tutorial and do the example exercises. Then apply what you've learned to your personal project. Many people make the mistake of trying to apply concepts instantly to their own app. I've made this mistake myself, so I can tell you from experience that you will learn much faster if you give a tutorial your undivided attention. Number 2, explain the concepts you learned to someone else. This could be a person, a dog, a cat, a teddy bear, or even a brick wall. The act of explaining the concept out loud will help you consolidate what you're learning and discover what you still don't fully understand. Number 3, rewrite your code frequently. This process is what programmers call refactoring. The idea is that as you learn to program more intelligently, you rewrite your code so that it does the same thing it did before, but better. By better, I mean more efficient, more readable, more self-explanatory, and more stable. Finally, number 4, celebrate the small victories. As you can tell by now, learning iOS programming is a long and at times frustrating process. It's like running a marathon up a mountain. If you don't stop at each mile, rest for a bit, and look down to see how far you've come, you'll never make it to the top. When I got up and running with the basics, the first app I made was a Chinese language vocabulary builder. One of the early problems I needed to solve was presenting the list of vocabulary words in a random order without repeating words. Once I figured that out, I focused on how to prompt the user for the English translation. Then I tackled checking the user's input to see if they got the right answer. Then I needed to tell the user whether their answer was correct or incorrect. Then I needed to keep score, and so on. Getting past each step is a small victory, and they add up exponentially over time. Before you know it, you're solving problems that a few months ago seemed out of your reach. So that's getting started with iOS programming. Thanks so much for watching.